How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a slightly different topic of video. I've been thinking a lot recently about the early days of me driving cars, the things I did right, the mistakes I made, all of the things that I wish I had known in the early years of me driving cars. And so, as part of that process, I decided to write down a long list of all the different things that I wish I had known when I was 17, 18, getting into driving cars, and the things that have kind of put me in good stead ever since. So hopefully some of you that have just started driving or are just getting into driving, and maybe even some of you that have been driving for a long time, can learn from the mistakes that I made and hopefully go forward without making the same ones. Hopefully this is enjoyable to some of you. If it is, make sure you do hit the like button. I would really appreciate it. It really helps the video out. Subscribe as well if you're new, but without further ado, let's get into the video. Now, the first thing that I wish I had known when I first got into cars was that you shouldn't really worry about having the best first car or the best car really at any time in your life. Just make sure that you have the right car. Now, when I say the right car, what I mean by that is I get a lot of people asking me if a Mazda MX-5 or a Toyota MR2 or whatever it would be a great first car. And to maybe some people it would be, but to me, a two-seater sports car was never going to be the correct first car. Even though when I was 17, 18, I would have loved to have had one of those cars as my first cars. I would have thought that they would have been the best things ever. I could turn up to school, everyone would have loved the car, yada yada yada. It just wasn't the right car for the time. At least for me anyway at that time. Maybe some of you at 17 years old, it is right to have a two-seater sports car. I'm not saying it isn't, but for me, 100%, I benefited so much from having a 5-door estate. Of course, it looked nowhere near as cool, but the things that it enabled me to do with my friends and with my family and with taking stuff to places and all that other good stuff was just way beyond the benefit of having a sports car at 17. So when you're looking at cars to buy as your first or in your early years or even later on in life as well, always make sure that you're buying the right car, not just the car that you think is pretty or whatever. A good practice to get into that I did with buying my MX-5 was writing down all the things that I want the car to do that I'm planning on buying, and then I basically make a short list of all the cars that fulfill the majority of those things that I want them to do, and then I buy the car. Nice and simple. The second thing I'd love to tell younger me is that you're not the best driver in the world, and you probably never will be. It is absolutely normal and acceptable as a 17, 18-year-old driving your car to make mistakes on the road, and you do that all the way through your driving career. I make mistakes all the time driving my car. It's just how it works. Of course, over time you make fewer mistakes and you make ones that aren't quite as life-jeopardizing and all that good stuff, but ultimately you don't need to worry about being an exceptional driver the day that you pass your test. And I am all for being confident and building up confidence in driving your car. Just know all the time what your real abilities are and look to improve them over time. That is what I would suggest to younger me. And I think I did that pretty well, but there were plenty of times where I probably put myself in the deep end a bit too early. Or times that I scolded myself for making mistakes like stalling or whatever. Here's another one that I definitely didn't do when I first got my Skoda. Maintain your car well. Just make sure you stay on top of all the things that you need to do to that car. I'm talking the basics like oil, like brake pads, like windscreen wash, look out for rust spots, all that other kind of stuff, and maybe go down to your local car shop, maybe like Halfords or other places like that. Buy some stuff that you think will help you look after the car, like things to stop the windscreen freezing up in the winter and that kind of stuff. Look at the maintenance schedule of your car and keep on top of things. Listen out for different noises the car is making and just kind of get accustomed to being a hands-on owner of your car. In the early days of owning my Skoda, I relied on having a mechanic as a dad to look after the car, whereas in reality I should have been doing all of that kind of stuff to look after it. I literally ran out of oil once about half a mile from home, which could have been easily avoided if I just looked at my dipstick. And trust me, in the longer term this will make you a better car owner, and it will also just make you a bit more hands-on and practical when it comes to managing your car. It's kind of like having a bank account. You should always look at what you're spending, have a look at all your outgoings and all your incomings and all that other kind of stuff to make sure that you are on top of your money. Apply the same logic to owning your car and you won't be so surprised when it goes wrong. Another one that I'd like to mention is that I don't think you should think too much about your next car. This is something that I still need to learn today. I'm always thinking about what the next car is going to be, what my money's going on next, where am I going to buy, what's the next thing, I want this 4C, I want this Lotus Exige, whatever it is. Just try and focus on the car that you have at the time, and when the time comes for you to buy a new car, then start thinking more about it. Otherwise you can get really overly obsessed with which is exactly where I am right now, and it's pretty dangerous for your wallet. Plus, it enables you to make much better and more thought out decisions in the longer term. The amount of cars that I would have bought if I had just bought the things that I wanted at those times that I wouldn't want today is just ridiculous. This is an important one that I've definitely learned over time. You can have just as much fun in slow cars as you can have in fast cars. If anything, you can often actually have more fun in slow cars than in fast cars, just because obviously there are speed limits on the roads. If I drive foot to the floor in my Polo, I am never getting in trouble. Trust me, that car is so slow, there is just no way I'm getting in trouble. But it teaches you to learn how to drive with momentum. It teaches you how to just kind of have fun, swing the car through corners, have a great time. Honestly, driving my Polo is a really fun experience, even though it has a 0 to 60 of 18 seconds. Honestly, I think I could run to 60 faster. But honestly, I think driving slow cars has helped me to become a faster driver when it comes to driving on track, because you learn the importance of momentum. You don't just rely on having a sweet bottom end. I absolutely love my Mazda MX-5 to bits. Supercharged, very quick, 0 to 60 probably in sub 5 seconds, but I never get to use that out on the roads. It's always a little bit stifling. I can't really use how great that car is on the roads, whereas I can use 100% of the Polo and just have a great time. And this twins up with another point. You can have just as much fun in cheap cars as you can have in expensive cars. I have driven some super cool expensive cars. Honestly, cars like the SL55 AMG, cars like the 4C, cars like the C63 AMG, all these really cool expensive cars, and they are great fun and they are exceptionally nice experiences. But I've also had an insane amount of fun in a £400 Skoda. In fact, I think the car I've had the single most amount of fun in was my £1,000 Mazda MX-5 when I was out on track pre being supercharged. It was just so much fun to cruise around with dead road tires and just skirt around a track. There are other benefits to having expensive cars, and yes, I would love to own a bunch of different expensive cars. That's just how the world works. But don't stifle yourself and assume that you're not having as much fun in your cheap car because you see expensive cars. Aspire to own those cars, but don't let that take away from the fun and the enjoyment that you're having today. Here's a weird one, but in the early days, be the designated driver. Honestly, I was designated driver at pretty much every single party that I went to. I was always driving my friends to and from parties and that kind of stuff. It gets you really into driving cars very early, and it gets you into using them and driving people around in them, and yeah, it's just good. Go early on being designated driver and drive your mates around, and it's always fun. Driving with passengers versus driving on your own are two different experiences to some degree, particularly when you're early on in your driving experience, and trust me, it's well worth forgoing a few nights of the sesh just to learn what it is to drive more. And as part of that, give your friends lifts. Basically, you want to take every opportunity that you can to go out and drive your car. Obviously, don't let people take advantage of you in the longer term, but at least for a while, just drive your friends to places. Be the person that is renowned for driving their car around, and it will set you up so good in terms of learning the different experiences and different things that happen out on the roads. When it comes to buying and looking at cars and all that other kind of stuff, don't cordon yourself off and don't kind of go too niche too early. Look at all of the breadth of different cars out there and just start to appreciate different types of cars. I used to be a massive BMW guy. I always wanted a Z4M, I always wanted a Z3, I wanted an M3. I still do want all of those cars, but now, because of doing this YouTube channel and because I have kind of opened myself up to different types of cars, I literally couldn't tell you what my favorite brand is. I couldn't tell you what my favorite car is because I like so many different cars. Just think, I didn't even like or have any interest in buying an MX-5 until you guys told me to buy one, and once I bought it, I've had more fun in it than any other car, and I've spent so much money on modifications to it, etc., all because I like it so much. If I had always sort of kept my horizons within like German cars, for example, I never would have had the amount of fun that I've had in that MX-5, or at least I never would have bought it and then had the fun that I've had. This is an important one to learn early. Even if you are a bad driver, just know that generally people's ability to drive is relatively poor, and a lot of people don't actually get better at driving, it seems, over their lifetime. They just seem to kind of stagnate. Over time, learn what the stupid mistakes are that people make out on the roads and try not to make them yourself, and also account for them whilst you're driving. Being a good driver is all about the experience that you have out on the roads and the knowledge and the foresight that you have when you can kind of guess what someone is going to do before they do it. Here's one I've only kind of worked out recently. Try driving to places that you wouldn't otherwise drive to. So for me living in London, it makes sense to take the tube to places, but if you drive to those places, you kind of get a better understanding of the routes and the roads and the ways that you get to those places and kind of link up the world a little bit more in your head. And the final one I wanted to mention, something that I really do wish I'd done early on in my driving experience, is go on a few long journeys. And when I say long journeys, I mean like 3 hours plus of driving. So if you're in like the south of England, drive to the north. If you're in the north, drive to the south. If you're in the west, drive to the east. Whatever it is, just go on some really long journeys in your car. Loads of people barely leave even their own towns, and it means when they have to go on long journeys or take motorways or whatever, they're kind of scared. And also they're just not used to the experience of spending an extended amount of time driving. Honestly, I am so much better on long journeys in terms of like staying awake, staying alert and all that other good stuff since I drove around Europe for 2 weeks. Before I did that, an hour and a half drive felt like forever, whereas today, an hour and a half feels like nothing to drive. I honestly can't stress that one enough. I honestly don't think I drove any further than about 20 or 30 miles when I was initially starting to drive, and now that I've done journeys of like 200 miles plus, it has put me in so much better stead for long journeys. So those are the things that I wish I had known when I first started to drive. I hope that they're helpful for some of you. I hope that even if you have been driving for many years and you've for whatever reason watched this video, you've taken something away from it. If you have been driving for many years, please do let me know in the comments down below as well, anything that you wish you had known when you first started to drive your car. Massive thank you to the patrons as always for their continued support, and to you guys as well for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Listen.